Gender plays a huge part in our everyday interactions, whether we realize it or not. Hi, I'm Keanu Ho, a fellow student in the Comms 122 class at SBCC. Gender is one of the main bases for influenceability, and there has been large areas of studies on how a person can be influenced or prejudged based on their gender. Not that many about how the role of one's gender can affect their own influence actually on others. Gender constructs lead us to believe that a certain sex is weaker than the other. Rather, I would argue that with proper circumstance and upbringing, a situation throughout a life can bring a person's influence and influenceability to develop somewhat like how their character will develop. With the right influence, a person can be shaped to be closer to whatever they want to be. However, sometimes the necessity and upbringing of gender constructs can get in the way, and this is something that's embedded in society, so it really is prominent and a big factor in communication nowadays. And it has been in the past, too. Some differences in male and female influenceability will be covered, differences in their influence, and some facts that all stem from how it can develop your influential strength towards other people. So, the article that I chose to review explained in depth the reason for gender construct in a more social sense. People are raised besides on their genders from birth in society, which has already put some kind of label on them. And, like, who we are is the basis for conducting communication with other people. This article focused on some of the subjects that we discussed in Chapter 1 under the area of interdependence on somebody else. Interdependence is the mutual reliance between two or more groups. It is oftentimes arising in interdependent relationships with interpersonal communication between autonomous participants. So, with interpersonal relationships majorly being based on gender, of course, this relates back to gender constructs and previous gender beliefs. And now, with the understanding of why gender exists, one will be able to step back and take a more analytical approach to everyday interactions, perhaps granting a greater wisdom, greater insight for what another person might be going through, or how someone conducts themselves throughout the day might change. I feel with understanding maybe a little bit more of why people can be more brutish and others more be mouse-like, but with more of an understanding of gender constructs and what might be playing on them without you knowing what might be going on, will definitely help you understand the reasons why a person might act a certain way. And, well, there was a lot of research findings in this article pointing in a general consensus. The researcher in the article went more on the idea to consolidate traditional gender and social roles and place that into an argument, explain why that is, but then relate that to, what's going on and why this is affecting our communication and how people interact with each other. So some of the major questions that my artist, had focused on, they had found that it seems that men have more social influence, and how gender and social constructs affect a person's exertion of influence onto others. Although it may not seem that sex has far more influence, this is actually not true, and it has a huge factor in how someone will treat you, or depending on the situation, what's going to happen. As far as research findings, there have been numerous studies that have shown men have greater influence, such as Scheichen in 1979 or Schneider in 1997, 1998, which was, after a review of 29 different studies was conducted among mixed-sex groups, the data pointed that men exerted more influence than women, which was conducted by Lockheed in 1985. So, there have been various other research that confirm these findings, just to name a few: Bernardes in 1984, Propp in 1995. They've just been going on for such a long time. And, even among children, this can be found too, with Dion and Stein's experiment, where they showed that, male children have more influence over female children just because that's how they're raised. There's no other way for someone to be influenced or to learn a certain way, but just because that's how they're raised. So, you know, females have to work so much harder in order to gain the respect of another person. There's not really gender-based tasks. It's more a task is either non-masculine or it is masculine, and a man will have more influence in the other tasks. So that's why they seem to have more power, and maybe why other women or a female might back down to the power just because they don't want to get in the way. And with all this research, it's pointed towards women needing to use methods of communication more so than males do, just because males will shut down. Males just, for some reason, have more respect. So for a woman to be respected in society, she has to work harder. She has to show that she understands and that she's not against you, because that makes a huge difference, especially with the opposite sex, in accepting the other person. And these applications can be applied across the board. Mainly it's going to be with oral communication between other people, of course, because it's gender and sex. Or even a male talking to a female, the male will have more influence, and a woman talking to a woman, it'll be more equal. In conclusion, I never really thought about how much a woman might have to use tact in order to get what she wants. It's a very judgmental world, I suppose. And women must constantly have greater influence than men if they are to rise up in society, basically. And these power differences are only perpetuating stereotypes.